Okay, we're fixing to see some breaking news here. I want you to please listen up to my viewers, if you don't mind. The first ordeal is pertaining to the airlines of two particular airplanes that has fallen out of the sky simultaneously, one right after the other. That's basically the same airlines. I think there's some breaking news on that towards banning or disabling that airplane until there's a deeper investigation. But the bigger story is the story that's fixing to come on after that story is pertaining to bogus school activities. And it really makes me sick. It's a heart-wrencher to sit and watch this. And I've watched it once, so I'm fixing to go outside while I document it. But I knew long ago, by being raised up in a little college town here in Martin, Tennessee, that the school system basically was rigged. And Donald Trump has no earthly idea whenever he talks about how that the whole system is rigged here in America. He has no earthly idea the in-depths of the illegitimacies that has been going on for years and years and years. And it's just now catching up with people. But whenever you have a school system that refuses to teach grammar school in the regard of teaching Indian historical history, and when you have a elementary school system that does not teach their people the laws of the land, leaving them vulnerable, you basically have an illegitimate school system. And what you're fixing to see right now in the next few minutes is going to be heartbreaking, especially those who have struggled towards doing things by the book, doing things according to the letterhead. And it's really a heartbreak to know that the system has become so outweighed in regard to the powerful and the rich and the elites that it's basically forcing these people over here that are trying to struggle, that are trying to get ahead. It's forcing them. It's a slap in the face to them, because it's saying to them, well, regardless of how much you work and how much you study and how good your grades are, you're still not going to achieve or overcome this over here. And that is not what our forefathers intended for any system. I don't care if it's the legal system, the school system, the medical system, the auto body industry system. I don't care what system it is. Everybody should play on an even keel pertaining to fairness. And what you're fixing to see is going to be a heartbreak. We must also remember the victims of those who perished that came to their sudden deceased pertaining to the airline industry, because we recognize that this is a form of transportation, not just here in America, but throughout the world. And we have said before, and we'll say again, whenever it comes to these supernatural powers that are at work, for Satan is out to kill, steal, and destroy, and he'll rise up in great wrath in the last days. We have said before, and we will say again, that don't take it out of the equation that it wasn't sabotaged by a supernatural being. Because I've literally seen things in front of my eyes, and you can call it fuzzy math if you want to, but I've literally seen things change in front of my eyes on a computer screen that really did not have no other explanation other than to say, this isn't a virus. This is a sabotage. Something has got in here that's taken on a whole new mindset with artificial intelligence. AI it's just unbelievable how powerful that artificial intelligence is. Also, one last thing before I flip it over to the news channel here, we want to say congratulations to Google pertaining to their 30th year birthday of the internet, which is a good thing, providing that it's used in a good way. I think this is the part where our masterminds did not put into the equation whenever they kind of like handed somebody a weapon, not realizing that they could weaponize this particular item pertaining to information. We live in an information era, and bad people with bad motives can do bad things with the computer. And we're just not talking about immoral sexual behavior. We're talking about going in and compromising people's accounts and stealing their identity and manipulating the whole system. So this is the part here that the masterminds didn't put to the equation pertaining to the experts towards putting up guard shields, firewalls to protect the general public from these type of illegitimate behaviors or illegitimate practices. Once more, what you're fixing to see is going to be a heartbreak. It's a heartbreak pertaining to the airline industry, but it's definitely a heartbreak whenever it comes to our educational system. Please listen.
Thing that alerted my doctor to my condition. Gold Bond Diabetics Dry Skin Relief. 90% saw noticeable skin improvement in 1 hour. My skin.
We have some breaking news now on that deadly plane crash in Ethiopia. 7 countries now have grounded the 737 MAX 8 plane, including the United Kingdom just this morning. It comes as pressure mounts on the FAA to stop U.S. airlines from using those same models. NBC's Tom Costello joins us now. And Tom, it's my understanding you have new information on others now joining in on this grounding of these planes. What's up?
I got to tell you, I'm struggling just to keep up. Ireland has now joined the list of countries that is grounding the 737 MAX. And several individual European countries are talking about doing the same. We are awaiting, that's what I was waiting for, France just now confirming that they are planning to ground the 737 MAX. If France does that...
And you got to realize this is a multi-billion-dollar move towards shutting these airplanes down. These are their workhorses. This is what transports human... cargo from point A to point B, and for them to make a massive decision like this is major. This is major. But whenever it comes to the safety and the well-being of the Homo sapien society, they really don't have a choice.
The UK does it. You might expect that the entire EU will do that. This follows Australia as well as Indonesia and China and a host of other countries, and a long list of individual airlines as well. 83 planes at the moment. 52% of the global fleet is now grounded. Really, that leaves pretty much only the U.S. fleet, the U.S. and Canadian 737 MAX fleet that is still flying. By the way, even Aeromexico has grounded their fleet. And I can tell you that moments ago, the Flight Attendants Union for American Airlines called on the CEO of American Airlines to ground the fleet. The FAA, however, has insisted all along it does not see any reason to do this. It doesn't see any data that would require that or essentially justify the action. Boeing has said all along that it believes the plane is safe. And listen, American Airlines and Southwest Airlines and United and the Canadian airlines to fly it, they all say this is a safe plane. But there is now this momentum that is rolling across the globe like we haven't seen in a long time to ground the 737 MAX until we know why. 2 730 MAX 8s crashed, the most recent one in Ethiopia and, of course, the other one in Indonesia about 5 months ago. The concern is that there may be something in common between these two accidents. We don't know. We don't know what the black boxes say. We don't know what the readout is on the black boxes. But if there is any common link, then you could imagine the FAA has already said that they will act very quickly to put the fleet down. I would stress that everybody on this side of the ocean, at least in North America, believes that the plane is safe. But boy, it is cascading around the world very quickly.
No kidding, Tom. And you talk about that momentum, right? Building not just around the world, but from the flight attendants union, from, by the way, politicians on Capitol Hill. You have Mitt Romney now coming out and saying, out of abundance of caution for the flying public, the FAA should ground this plane as well. Do you see at some point a tipping point here, or is it your sense that the FAA is pretty confident, pretty dug in on this idea that data shows the plane is safe?
So 2 points. I talked to a couple of people within the airlines themselves this morning. Their demeanor clearly has changed, and they believe that, in fact, the momentum is going to be such that the FAA simply cannot withstand the public pressure and the growing public, outcry around the world to ground the plane. They believe they would not be surprised if the FAA acts. I talked to the former DOT Secretary, Ray LaHood, a short time ago, the Secretary of Transportation under President Obama, who grounded the 787 fleet when they had those batteries catching fire, you may recall. He says he would ground the 737 MAX fleet because of the lack of confidence right now worldwide.
Tom, sorry to interrupt you with that stinger. Tom Costello, thank you. We want to take you now.
I want to verify what I just said. I should have said simultaneously versus simultaneously, because the plane that they're talking about earlier fell out of the sky approximately 5 months ago. But it's still engineers' questions of safety issues. And keep in mind, whenever I was in the auto body industry, day after day after day, that's all the insurance companies kept pumping into our minds. In every boat that we turned, and every screw that we turned, and every weld that we welded was safety, safety, safety. And we have to depend upon these type of civil duties to recognize that if there's a problem, regardless whether it's the rolling over of the Ford Explorers that they finally caught here in America because of the bad tires, or whatever that it may be, that we have to be concerned about human life and human dignity at all cost. Now let's listen to this, because this is an absolute heart-wrencher. Please listen. This is breaking news.
To Boston, and we appreciate Tom's reporting here about that college entrance cheating scandal. We're about to get more information now from the feds in Boston. Let's listen.
In the largest college admissions scam ever prosecuted by the Department of Justice, we've charged 50 people nationwide with participating in a conspiracy that involved, first, cheating on college entrance exams, meaning the SAT and the ACT, and second, securing admission to elite colleges by bribing coaches at those schools to accept certain students under false pretenses. In return for bribes, these coaches agreed to pretend that certain applicants were recruited competitive athletes, when in fact the applicants were not. As the coaches knew, the students' athletic credentials had been fabricated. Overall, today we have charged 3 people who organized these scams, 2 SAT or ACT exam administrators, 1 exam proctor, 1 college administrator, 9 coaches at elite schools, and 33 parents who paid enormous sums to guarantee their children's admission to certain schools through the use of bribes and fake academic and athletic credentials. A central defendant in the scheme, William Singer, will plead guilty today to charges of racketeering conspiracy, money laundering conspiracy, conspiracy to defraud the United States, and obstruction of justice. Singer allegedly ran a college counseling service and something called the Key Worldwide Foundation. Between roughly 2011 and 2018, wealthy parents paid Singer about $25 million in total to guarantee their children's admission to elite schools, including Yale, Georgetown, Stanford, the University of Southern California, the University of Texas, UCLA, and Wake Forest. Beyond enriching himself, Singer used that money to bribe college officials, Division I coaches, college exam administrators, all to secure admission for the children of his clients, not on their merits, but through fraud. Singer's foundation purported to be a charitable organization, but was actually a front Singer used to launder the money that parents paid him of which you would then take a portion and dole it out as bribes to coaches and others. More specifically, with respect to the SAT and ACT scheme, numerous parents paid Singer between $15,000 and $75,000 to have someone either take the exam for their child or to correct their child's answers afterward, all to achieve a sufficiently high pre-agreed score on those tests. Singer accomplished this by paying defendant Mark Riddell, also charged today, to take or correct the exams, and by bribing two exam administrators, defendants Nikki Williams and Igor Dvorsky, to allow this to happen on their watch. Singer paid Williams about $5,000 per student and Dvorsky about $10,000 per student. To facilitate the scam, Singer counseled parents to take their children to a therapist and get a letter saying that because of purported learning disabilities or other issues, the child needed additional time to complete the ACT or the SAT. Once the companies that administer those exams had agreed to the extra time, Singer arranged for the child to take the exam individually with one of the proctors he had bribed, or one of the administrators he had bribed, either at a location in Houston or a location in California. Beyond the SAT and ACT scam, parents also paid Singer money that he then used to bribe coaches and administrators to designate their children as recruited athletes for various schools. In return for bribes, coaches would use slots that their schools had allocated to them for the recruitment of athletes, instead to take the applicants Singer had identified.
I want to stop right there for a second and apologize for the inconvenience of the technology of not being clear. Last week, they shut down my Dish network service. They said it had something to do with satellite trouble. They shut it down. They rebooted it back up, and I thought that it was a stronger signal. Today, I'm getting a lot more interference. It is cloudy, but up until just within the past week, I've not had no trouble out of this particular system that I'm obtaining my information from, pertaining to news networks all over the world. I want to apologize for the blurriness, and also the fact that I've never seen so much corruption that for the past couple years have been floating to the surfaces towards various institutions and various government agencies being exposed to the world of their massive corruption, from government officials, political officials, spiritual officials, teaching officials, from the White House to the church house to the schoolhouse, all the way down to the outhouse. I've never seen so much heart-wrenching, sobering events happening in America that is just absolutely appalling to think that we have reached this pivotal point in our history in America in the 21st century. And I'm not saying that all schools is bad, because I know that they're not. You got good, honest people, principals and teachers and professors and administrators. You got good, honest people that are trying to do their jobs efficiently and professionally every day, regardless whether it be elementary or high school or colleges or universities. But this right here, it's sickening to hear what has went on. And this is probably, if the truth be known, just a skim of the iceberg towards actually catching the underhandedly illegitimate practices that goes on pertaining to the wealthy and the rich, that thinks that they can be above the law or above school examinations or above rules and regulations more so than the working class or the poor class. It's a heartbreak.
Singer worked with the parents to fabricate impressive athletic profiles for their kids, including fake athletic credentials or honors, or fake participation in elite club teams. In many instances, Singer helped parents take staged photographs of their children engaged in particular sports. Other times, Singer and his associates used stock photos that they pulled off the internet, sometimes photoshopping the face of the child onto the picture of the athlete and submitting it in support of the applications for these children to elite schools. In one example, the head women's soccer coach at Yale, in exchange for $400,000, accepted an applicant as a recruit for the Yale women's team, despite knowing that the applicant did not even play competitive soccer. The student was in fact admitted, and afterward, the student's family paid Singer $1.2 million for that service. In addition to the standardized test scam and the college admissions scam, Singer also arranged for someone to take online high school classes in place of certain students, so that those students could submit higher grades as part of their overall college application packages. The parents' payments to Singer for these services were made, at least in part, as charitable contributions to the sham charity that Singer had set up. At his direction, employees of the charity sent Singer's clients acknowledgement letters, falsely confirming that no goods or services had been exchanged for the purported donation. This enabled the parents to not only mask the true nature of the payment, but also take the tax write-off at the end of the year. Today, we have charged 33 parents nationwide with hiring Singer's group to defraud testing companies and/or various universities. These parents are a catalog of wealth and privilege. They include, for example, CEOs of private and public companies, successful securities and real estate investors, 2 well-known actresses, a famous fashion designer, and the co-chairman of a global law firm. Based on the charges unsealed today, all of them knowingly conspired with Singer and others to help their children either cheat on the SAT or ACT and/or buy their children's admission to elite schools through fraud. Singer's clients paid him anywhere between $100,000 and $6.5 million for this service, though the majority paid between $250,000 and $400,000 per student. This case is about the widening corruption of elite college admissions through the steady application of wealth combined with fraud. There can be no separate college admissions system for the wealthy, and I'll add that there will not be a separate criminal justice system either. Every year, hundreds of thousands of hardworking, talented students strive for admission to elite schools. As every parent knows, these students work harder and harder every year in a system that appears to grow more and more competitive every year. And that system is a zero-sum game. For every student admitted through fraud, an honest, genuinely talented student was rejected. The parents charged today, despite already being able to give their children every legitimate advantage in the college admissions game, instead chose to corrupt and illegally manipulate the system for their benefit. We're not talking about donating a building so that a school's more likely to take your son or daughter. We're talking about deception and fraud, fake test scores, fake athletic credentials, fake photographs, bribed college officials. As you can see from the various charging documents unsealed today in this case, the investigation was complex and extremely labor-intensive. 2 defendants will plead guilty this afternoon. As I mentioned before, William Singer will plead guilty at 2:30 today in this courthouse. And John Vandemore, who is the head sailing coach at Stanford University, will also plead guilty today at 3 p.m. I want to thank the 4 prosecutors in my office who were assigned to this investigation for their extraordinary work on this case. The lead prosecutor on this matter, Eric Rosen, is up here with me today. I also want to thank the FBI and the IRS for their usual professionalism and skill in the investigation and takedown of this case. The takedown today involved over 200 federal agents nationwide who arrested 50 people in 6 states and on both coasts. With that, I'll hand things over to Joe Bonavolonta, who is the special agent in charge of the Boston office of the FBI. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Once again, my name is Joe Bonavolonta, and I'm the special agent in charge of the FBI Boston Division. Operation Varsity Blues culminated early this morning when approximately 300 special agents from the FBI and the IRS criminal investigations set out to arrest 46 individuals across the country for their roles in an international college admissions bribery and money laundering scam. So far, 38 individuals have been safely taken into custody, and 7 are working towards surrender. 1 is being actively pursued. Another 4 are expected to plead guilty here in Boston, 2 later today, and 2 in the coming weeks. We believe all of them, parents, coaches, and facilitators, lied, cheated, and covered up their crimes at the expense of hardworking students and taxpayers everywhere. Our investigation began last May after we uncovered evidence of a large-scale, elaborate fraud while working an unrelated undercover operation. Following 10 months of intense investigative efforts using a variety of sophisticated techniques, the FBI uncovered what we believe is a rigged system, robbing students all over the country of their right at a fair shot to getting into some of the most elite universities in this country, such as Yale, Stanford, and Georgetown. We believe everyone charged here today had a role in fostering a culture of corruption and greed that created an uneven playing field for students trying to get into these schools the right way through hard work, good grades, and community service. Unfortunately, what many students didn't know was that the odds had already been stacked against them by corrupt practices, including but not limited to bribery, falsification of athletic profiles, and near perfect SAT and ACT scores that were fraudulently obtained on behalf of other students, when in reality they were far from perfect. Make no mistake, this is not a case where parents were acting in the best interests of their children. This is a case where they flaunted their wealth, sparing no expense, to cheat the system so they could set their children up for success with the best education money could buy, literally. Some spent anywhere from $200,000 to $6.5 million for guaranteed admission. Their actions were, without a doubt, insidious, selfish, and shameful. And the real victims in this case are the hardworking students who did everything they could to set themselves up for success in the college admissions process, but ended up being shut out because far less qualified students and their families simply bought their way in. What's also cause for concern is how this was even allowed to happen in the first place. Evidence we've obtained shows that trusted coaches and administrators manipulated the systems their universities had in place to accommodate students with fake athletic credentials, some of whom did not even play the sports they were recruited to play. It's a sham that strikes at the core of the college admissions process at universities across the country. And the alleged mastermind behind it, Rick Singer, offered a variety of cheating options as part of a widespread conspiracy to enrich himself, while also facilitating cheating on SAT and ACT exams, recruiting applicants onto competitive athletic teams in exchange for bribes, and concealing the nature and source of those bribes. There's no telling what their school of thought was while carrying out this conspiracy, but today's arrests should be a warning to others. You can't pay to play, you can't lie and cheat to get ahead, because you will get caught. This was a complex and demanding investigation, and it was charged accordingly. The use of the RICO statute signals the magnitude of the criminal enterprise and the seriousness of the crimes. I would like to personally recognize the investigators and prosecutors who pursued this case. However, our work is not done. Our investigation continues, and we will continue to find and stop those who aren't playing by the rules, because as you can see in this case, the impact on everyday people is real, has consequences, and broad-ranging effect. My sincerest appreciation for the tremendous work done by the United States Attorney and his team, as well as my thanks to Special Agent in Charge Christina O'Connell and her folks at the IRS Criminal Investigation for their continued partnership and support. This was truly a team effort. Thank you.
IRS.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here. I'd like to thank U.S. Attorney Andrew Lelling and FBI Special Agent in Charge Joseph Bonavolanta for the opportunity to address you here today. Again, my name is Christina O'Connell. I'm the Special Agent in Charge of the IRS Criminal Division of the Boston Field Office. This morning, special agents from IRS Criminal Investigation, alongside the FBI, arrested dozens of individuals for their role in a nationwide scheme to exchange bribes for college admissions. At the center of this sweeping financial crime is William Rick Singer. Singer and the others arrested today conspired to not only make and receive bribes, but to also funnel those bribe payments through a bogus charity founded by Singer. Utilizing this charitable business facade, Singer was able to conceal the true source and nature of the bribe payments. Then, to further the false legitimacy, Singer advised parents making the bribes that they could deduct the illicit payments as charitable donations on their own individual income tax returns. Overall, IRS Criminal Investigation and the FBI traced over $25 million in bribes laundered through this alleged charity founded by Singer. Overall, our investigators also revealed that the true objective of those involved was not charity at all, but greed. IRS Criminal Investigation will continue to collaborate with our law enforcement partners in the United States Attorney's Office on these complex financial investigations to ensure that the honest American taxpayers receive the message that IRS Criminal Investigation will never let financial corruption and greed trump hard work and honest effort. Thank you.
Questions?
Boston from the lead office to prosecute this case?
Well, it appears to be a conspiracy nationwide in scope. There are several connections to the Boston area. So fake test scores, for example, were submitted to Boston College, Boston University, and Northeastern. Two of the defendants live in the state. A lot of the conspiratorial activity, phone calls, meetings, did happen here. And we, frankly, had the resources and the sophistication to take down a case of this magnitude.
Do you have any idea how many students were able to make it into these schools over the years?
We don't know the total number. As Special Agent in Charge Bonavolanta mentioned, this is still ongoing. So the 33 parents who we have charged, their children were able to get in somewhere. There are more than that, but I'm not prepared to give you a total.
Is there anything that's going to happen to those students?
I'm sorry?
Is there anything that's going to happen to those students who got in fraudulently?
Well, there are two aspects to that question, right? There is, what is the reaction of the schools they go to? We leave that to the schools. That's not my bailiwick. As to charges against them, we're still considering that. It's not an accident that there are no students charged in these charging documents. The parents, the other defendants, are clearly the prime movers of this fraud. It remains to be seen whether we charge any of the students.
What degree did the students graduate? Do you know any percentage of how many students that actually got in fraudulently went on to graduate degrees?
I don't know the answer to that question.
How active were the students?
Parents very popular.
I'm sorry?
Obviously, those two parents, particularly popular in Boston and Oregon. It sounds like they took two different routes. Can you go into a little bit more detail what each of those kind of doing?
Well, there are essentially, I'll speak more broadly, there were essentially two kinds of fraud that Singer was selling. One was to cheat on the SAT or ACT, and the other was to use his connections with Division I coaches and use bribes to get these parents' kids into school with fake athletic credentials. Some parents took advantage of one. I think Ms. Huffman, for example, took advantage of one of these, which was the SAT cheating scam. Some took advantage of the other, and some took advantage of both. There's no pattern that way.
Any understanding as to why she didn't do it for a second child according to the paperwork?
I can't comment on that.
Explain a little bit more about how you guys uncovered this.
I think what I can say is that our first lead in this case came during interviews with a target of an entirely separate investigation who gave us a tip that this activity might be going on.
Beyond money, how did Rick Singer get his influence? How did he build up all these connections?
Well, I think he began in this college counseling business years and years ago and built up his connections over time. I think beyond that, I can't really comment. As you can tell from the charging documents, the recruitment part of the scam depended on the personal relationships he had established with Division I coaches at a variety of elite schools.
It says in here that the students are minimally involved in the exam cheating, but for a lot of these things, in terms of like getting the definition of learning disabled, how involved were the students? How much do they know what was going on?
That varied tremendously. And so, for example, when you look at the complaint affidavit, which I realize is quite long, you will see instances where it's important to parents that their child not know that this had occurred. And in that kind of instance, the student would actually go and take the exam, and someone working for Singer would come in afterward, correct enough of the answers, submit the exam. In some instances, however, the child did know. And in fact, there's an instance in the complaint affidavit where a particular defendant and his daughter are on a conference call with Singer to discuss the scam. So there was a pretty wide range of how parents tried to play this, and Singer, I think, attempted to accommodate whatever the parents wanted to do.
Is the coaches who are taking these bribes, was it for personal gain, or was it sometimes going towards the athletic programs at the school?
It was both. So there is one coach who did not take any of the money for himself. The other coaches all took some money for themselves. Some took all of it for themselves, but most, it appears, gave some portion to the school's program and took some for their own use.
Was this case tied to you mentioned another case that gave you a lead. Was this the Jerome Allen case with Celtics?
No, it was not.
You said the BC Northeastern BU were victims of this admissions fraud. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, they all received test scores that were artificially inflated through the cheating scandal. In one instance, as you'll see in the complaint, it appears that one of the defendants entered a quid pro quo with Singer, where Singer would help that defendant's student commit fraud, and in exchange, the parent would help one of Singer's other clients with admission to Northeastern University. I know it's a little confusing, but you'll see that in the complaint.
And there's no evidence that the schools knew anything about this? I mean, they just believed what he was giving them?
I think that's an important distinction to draw. It appears that the schools are not involved. It appears that in all of these instances, with the exception of one USC administrator who we have charged, University of Southern California administrator we have charged, the coaches were allotted slots for athletic recruitment. The coaches worked with Singer, meaning they accepted bribes. Singer gave the coaches sufficiently impressive fake athletic credentials. The coaches used those athletic profiles to convince everyone else internally that this was a good recruit for the team. The person was admitted, and the coach pocketed a bribe.
Can you talk about some of the punishments, the level of punishments these defendants would face?
It's a little premature for that. I mean, the statutes that we charge people under all have very high statutory maximums, but the actual sentence that someone might face, we just don't know that yet. It's very premature for that. Some of these bribes are substantial. You know, bribes between, as I said, usually between $250,000 and $400,000. Actually, I should say donations to Singer from which he made these bribes of college coaches. So it's a little premature to say what ranges of sentencing they might be.
Targets become cooperating witnesses?
Well, I mean, I think as you guys know, and as you can see in the complaint affidavit, we do occasionally flip targets and they wind up cooperating, but I can't comment on whether any of these people will. I will say that the investigation remains active. These are not the only parents involved. We suspect these probably aren't the only coaches involved. And so we will be moving ahead to look for additional targets.
You said
Did
singers
Singer ever work
respected.
for any one of these colleges before?
I'm sorry?
Did Singer ever work for one of these major universities before?
Meaning, was he an employee of any of these universities?
As an administrator, did he ever start that way, or he sort of got involved in this world like that?
Sitting here now, I do not know the answer to that. I'm sorry.
Any criminal history for him?
I'm not going to comment on that.
And you said that he's planning on pleading guilty today. What has been the conversation? What's led up to that? Obviously, you didn't just hear about these charges this morning. Can you shed any light on that?
I can't shed a lot of light on that because most of that is confidential. I can state the obvious, which is that we identified Singer some time ago, and he has decided under a plea agreement to plead guilty to racketeering, among other charges. You knew that already, but that's really all I can tell you.
About the sentencing tied to that plea agreement?
Offhand, I don't remember what the provisions of the plea agreement will say about sentencing, but the plea agreement should ultimately be a public document, and you will be able to see that yourself. It will be docketed.
You mentioned that it appears that the schools are not involved, with the exception of that one administrator. Are the schools under investigation versus where are they currently part of your ongoing investigation?
Right now, the schools themselves are not targets of this investigation. As you can see from the charges we brought, the investigation was very broad. We've charged a lot of people throughout the investigation and our investigation of each of these targets. We have not seen the schools as co-conspirators with this activity.
Thank you.
How long has this investigation been underway since that first plea begun?
I think it's been under investigation a little over a year. Am I right about that? A little over a year.
When the students who purportedly play these sports get to this, these are big programs, Division I programs, and they don't play the sport.
It varied. Some simply never showed up for the athletics. Some pretended an injury. And I think some played briefly and then quit.
One of the defendants is from the case. Can you tell us more about that?
Beyond what's in the complaint affidavit, I cannot tell you more about that.
And are any students still currently enrolled? Children of these parents that you charge? Well, we're talking about past.
No, as you'll see from the charging documents, most of this activity is fairly current. So I assume, I can't tell you directly, that the vast majority of the students admitted under false pretenses are in these schools and are enrolled and are active students.
I'm going to be frank with you and tell you the reason why that this touches my heart. In growing up here in Weakley County, going to school, elementary school in Sharon, Tennessee, this was always considered a farming community. And it was always an umbrella of excuse towards various families that was farming during this time of using the farming agriculture industry as an excuse towards not being too hard on Tommy or Billy or Jim or James because they was not being up to date with their schooling activities. The reason why that this touches my heart is that I went through similar circumstances towards the farming agriculture industry, plus having to deal with an illegitimate father that did not know how to control his emotions because of what he had experienced in his previous life pertaining to the military. And to think that I was going to bring my homework home every night just to get beat, just to be slapped around and knocked around because I was having trouble understanding proper English, and to be put under that type of stress was just relentless of what I could bear, to the point that I basically would just not even try in school, and I would go to sleep in class, and the teachers would automatically give us a D. I wasn't the only one. There was 4 or 5 others. I don't know what their problems was. They may have been going through the exact same thing at home. I don't know. But I do know this, that the school system here in Weakley County, the elementary school system, did not enforce their teaching methods properly, which caused me to be lax to the point that if I did not take the bull by the horns towards getting a job and becoming self-sustainable in working originally in the carpentry industry, and then moving from the carpentry industry to the ironworking industry, the industrial construction industry. If I did not do that, I would have sure enough been so far behind that there would have been no chance of any type of survival. Because to think that I was going to come home and be abused on a day-to-day level because I had a father that was out of control, that had a sickness, I would have been a fool to have bared that. And that's the reason why the school industry, regardless whether it's the elementary or the high school or the colleges or the universities, I don't know the whole in-depth detail about what he's talking about, other than it being serious in the part of fraudulent activity going on. I don't know the whole depth of it to the point of me being able to talk about it, because this is brand new on the circuit here. This is news just coming off of the front burner here. But I do know that in this area where I'm at here, because of the lackness of various teaching practices, helped to destroy individuals' lives that could have been a whole lot more predominant in society towards being a good asset, regardless whether he was an asset towards being a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or a scientist or an artist or whatever. And a lot of times the dynamics of where a person is raised towards availability means everything in the world towards whether or not that person is going to be a success or a failure. And I'm pretty well convinced that if I would have remained up in the Chicago district where I was originally born, somebody would have caught my dyslexia and other parts of me not being able to catch on as quick as what I did, and somebody up there would have had the proper technique that would have advanced me properly to the point that I would have been able to have gotten proper education at a younger age, and that I could have made a better success out of my life, other than struggling and being misunderstood and also being rejected by the church world. It's really, really sad whenever you look at one of the greatest nations in the world that has taken back seat to almost everything. Whenever Donald Trump, our president of the United States, talks about the system falling apart and it being rigged, he's not just talking about the law, the judicial system pertaining to the politics of this country. He's talking about everything. It's absolutely astronomical in the hardships that has befallen family after family after family, millions and millions of families that has fallen, sifted through the cracks, simply because of us not crossing our T's and dotting our I's. And to think that we have various well-to-do people out there that are willing to take advantage of the system just simply because they've got big, fat, deep pockets. Just absolutely, it makes me sick at my stomach.
Do any of these non-athletes get athletic scholarships in addition?
I don't know the answer to that. I can tell you that based on what I've seen in the charging documents, I don't think that's the case. I think they got admission, but I don't think they got separate athletic scholarships. What Singer was good at doing was calibrating the fake credentials to appear realistic and not so impressive as to invite suspicion or additional scrutiny.
Did he have any legitimate clients?
You have been listening to the feds in Boston lay out, frankly, jaw-dropping details of what they call Operation Varsity Blues. 50 people arrested in a scheme that investigators say exposes the corruption and fraud in a rotten college admissions system. One of the organizers of this scheme will plead guilty later today, accused of taking eye-popping amounts of money, millions of dollars from parents, including 2 famous actresses, to cheat their kids' way into elite schools by pretending they were better athletes or did better on exams. In some cases, even photoshopping fake pictures to show how good they were at sports they didn't actually play. I want to bring in now NBC Investigations reporter Tom Winter. And Tom, a couple of takeaways from this. Number one, this is not over yet. You heard investigators very clearly say that they are looking at other parents and other people, coaches, for example, involved in this. And number two, some of these students did know what their parents were up to, and some of them didn't.
Yeah, Hallie, and just to tack on to that, the U.S. Attorney there, Andrew Lelling, not ruling out charges for those students who are presumably still in school. He said it's up to the schools whether or not those students will remain at those colleges. A couple of things from the press conference, things and also going through the court documents here, things that I found of interest. Basically, they're talking here. This is fraud. This isn't, as the U.S. Attorney said, this isn't something where somebody wanted to donate a building or make kind of a preemptive donation to the school. This was outright fraud. The new head of the FBI Boston field office, Joseph Bonavolata, saying it's the shame that strikes at the core of college admissions. Holly, I can give you some new details based upon the charging complaint. You're looking at some of the schools that were involved in this as far as where the students went to. The colleges themselves are not directly implicated, but we know that this investigation started back in September this year, and one of the people cooperating, Hallie, actually started to tip off some of the people that this investigation was underway. So a lot more details, a lot more things to go through.
And we'll be checking back with you throughout the day here on MSNBC and look for more reporting on nightly news. For now, though, I'll turn it over to Andrea Mitchell Reports. Andrea Mitchell with me here on set. Lots to cover today.
A lot going on. Biden today. Right now on Andrea Mitchell Report.
Once more, I want to emphasize that once I went to high school, I barely made it to the 9th grade. I knew that I was looking at a catastrophe in my life because I was so far in behind everybody else. It was basically going to be impossible for me to catch up. So, by the age of, at 10th grade, I knew that I was going to be a dropout. There was no other alternative if I was going to be a survivor. And you got to go back to the stem of war in my situation, my particular problem. That if this government would handle its military problems correctly, the military problems would not sift off into the civilian life to the point that the civilian life had to suffer because of what this government did not do for their own military people. You know, you want to teach them how to hold a gun. You want to teach them how to march and salute, take orders. You want to teach them how to be mass murderers by going to other parts of the world. But then whenever they come back, for some strange reason, this government does not either care or don't understand the broad consequences towards not properly taking care of the very monsters that they wanted to create. And it's one thing to do that, but then to throw that burden off onto the civilian life and say, oh, because we're not willing to take care of our duties, we expect for the innocent civilian life to do it for us. To me, is one of the most sorriest, worthless burdens placed upon to humanity, to think that a government would actually be willing to do that to their own people. And I know for a fact that there's thousands upon hundreds of thousands of civilian families that have been either damaged or ruined on account of war, on account of this military complex that feeds upon to itself. That it would be so much simpler, so much easier if everybody just got along, compromised just a little bit. You know, it would be just so much simpler, so much more productive. God only knows where this planet would be right now if things would have been turned around and handled differently 30 years ago. But we can't dwell on the past now, can we? We can only look forward to the future. The future that is unknown to a society that has made such a horrible, horrible mistake with its own people. Good luck to all of us. Good luck to those who are striving and working and trying to obey the rules, and those who are trying to be that in which what they feel like that their Heavenly Father has created them to be. Good luck to all of us, those who are believing in a holy, righteous, glorious God. The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, the God of the Lord Jesus Christ. Good luck to all of us in these last days. Shalom.